Your daughter just posted something about you. The words came through my phone speaker as I stood in my kitchen, hands deep in soapy dishwater. My friend Nellaline's voice carried that particular tone, the one people use when they're about to deliver bad news but feel obligated to deliver it anyway. I pulled my wet hands out of the sink, set the phone down on the counter, carefully. What kind of something? I asked. You should probably just look at it yourself. The phone felt heavier than it should have as I picked it back up. My fingers were still dripping. I didn't bother drying them. I opened Instagram, and there it was, pinned to the top of my daughter's profile. A post with 17,000 likes and climbing. A photograph of me from last Christmas, taken at my granddaughter's holiday party. I was holding a glass of water. Just water. But the caption beneath it made everything stop. My mother has been struggling with alcoholism for years. Today, at my daughter's school event, she showed up already 3 drinks in. I love her, but I can't enable this behavior anymore. If you're struggling with addiction, please reach out for help. Addiction is a disease. Family first. I read it 3 times, then 4. My eyes kept catching on the same words. 3 drinks in, alcoholism for years. The timestamp showed it had been posted 4 hours ago. 4 hours, and nobody had called me. Nobody except Nellaline, who felt obligated. The water in my glass was still sitting on the counter from this morning. I picked it up and drank it all. My daughter's name is Kiraya. She's 32 years old, married to a man named Carlton, and she works in marketing for a pharmaceutical company. She's always been ambitious, always been the kind of person who needed to be right, needed to be seen, needed to be the center of attention in every room she entered. When she was 7 years old, she once told her kindergarten class that her mother was a professional dancer, just to see if anyone would believe her. They did. I found out when the teacher called to ask when my performances were scheduled. But this was different. I set the phone down and stood very still in my kitchen. The afternoon light was coming through the windows at that particular angle that made everything look slightly unreal. I could hear the refrigerator humming, the neighbor's dog barking 2 houses over, the sound of my own breathing, which seemed suddenly very loud. I don't drink. I never have. Not because of any moral stance or religious conviction. I simply don't like the taste of alcohol. Never have. When I was in college, I tried beer at a party and found it bitter and unpleasant. Wine gave me headaches. Liquor burned my throat. So I stopped trying. For 45 years, I've been the person at parties with a glass of sparkling water. The one who drives everyone home. The one who remembers what everyone said the next morning. But Kiraya knew that. She knew that better than anyone. I opened my phone again and scrolled through the comments. They were pouring in now. Hundreds of them. People I didn't know offering support to my daughter for her bravery in speaking out. People sharing their own addiction stories. People tagging their friends. People using it as a jumping-off point for their own narratives about family dysfunction. One comment caught my eye. It was from someone named Uwina Lucas, and it said, "Have you considered an intervention?" Sometimes people don't realize how bad it's gotten until someone they love forces them to see it. Kiraya had liked that comment. I closed the app and called my daughter. The phone rang 4 times before she answered, and I could hear the careful brightness in her voice, the tone she used when she was prepared for conflict. "Hi, Mom. Did you post that about me?" I asked. There was a pause, not a long one, but long enough to confirm that she had known I would find out, that she had posted it knowing I would find out, that she had wanted me to find out. I posted about my own experience, she said carefully. I didn't mention you by name. You posted a picture of me, At my granddaughter's school event, where I was drinking water. Mom, I know this is hard to hear. I hung up. I stood in my kitchen for a long time after that. I didn't move. I didn't cry. I didn't do any of the things that people do when they're upset. I simply stood there, looking at my reflection in the dark window above the sink, trying to understand how my daughter had decided that destroying my reputation was the right thing to do. The phone started ringing almost immediately. Kiraya, calling back. I didn't answer. She called again and again. Then she texted, Mom, please, we need to talk about this. I turned the phone off. That night, I sat in my living room and tried to remember the exact moment when my relationship with my daughter had shifted from love into something else. Not hate. I could never hate Kiraya. But something closer to confusion. Something like looking at a familiar face and realizing you don't actually know the person behind it. Kiraya was born when I was 23 years old. I had wanted children desperately. I had spent my entire teenage years imagining what it would be like to be a mother, planning the kind of mother I would be. I was going to be present. I was going to listen. I was going to make my children feel valued and seen and loved, no matter what. I was going to do everything my own mother hadn't done. And for the first 10 years, I thought I was succeeding. Kiraya was a bright, curious child. She loved to read. She loved to perform. She would put on shows in the living room, creating elaborate narratives where she was always the hero. I would sit and watch, clapping and cheering, telling her how talented she was, how special she was, how she could be anything she wanted to be. But somewhere around middle school, something shifted. Kiraya became obsessed with how other people perceived her. She started keeping track of which girls at school were popular and which ones weren't. She began wearing clothes that didn't quite fit her personality, adopting mannerisms that seemed borrowed from magazines. She was performing all the time now, but not for the joy of it. She was performing for approval. I had tried to talk to her about it. I had told her that she didn't need to be anyone other than herself, that the people who mattered would love her for who she actually was. She had looked at me with an expression of such profound pity that I had stopped mid-sentence. You just don't understand how the world works, she had said. And maybe she was right. Maybe I didn't understand. But I had loved her anyway. I had loved her through high school and college. I had loved her through her first terrible relationship when she dated a man who made her feel small. I had loved her through her career changes and her wedding and the birth of my granddaughter, Kamiyara. I had shown up for every important moment. I had been present. I had listened. I had done everything I promised myself I would do, but it had never been enough. Because Kiraya didn't want a mother who loved her. Kiraya wanted a mother she could use as a cautionary tale. A mother who could serve as a backdrop for her own narrative of triumph and survival. And now, she had found a way to make me into that. The next morning, I woke up to find that the post had been shared over 200,000 times. My phone was filled with messages from people I hadn't spoken to in years. Former coworkers, distant relatives, friends of friends. Everyone had seen it. Everyone had an opinion about it. Everyone wanted to offer their support to my daughter for her courage. Nobody asked me if it was true. Nobody called to check on me. By noon, the local news had picked it up. Local woman's daughter bravely speaks out about mother's addiction struggle. The article included screenshots of the post, quotes from addiction specialists about the prevalence of alcoholism in older adults, and a statement from Kiraya's employer saying they were proud to support employees who prioritize family wellness. I sat in my kitchen and read the article 3 times. Then I called my lawyer. His name was Natan Morris, and he had been my attorney for 12 years. He handled my will, my property documents, my business contracts. When I told him about the post, he was quiet for a long moment. "Is it true?" he asked finally. "No." "Can you prove it?" That's when I realized the full scope of the problem. How do you prove that you don't drink? You can't take a blood test retroactively. You can't produce years of sobriety tests that you never took because there was no reason to take them. You can't prove a negative. "It doesn't matter if you can prove it," Natan said, reading my silence correctly. "What matters is that your daughter made a public statement that damaged your reputation. That's defamation. We can file a suit." "Against my daughter?" "Yes." The word hung in the air between us like something physical. Sue my daughter. Take her to court. Force her to defend her lies under oath. Destroy whatever relationship we still had. "Let me think about it," I said. But I wasn't thinking. I was already making a decision. I was already choosing the path that would define everything that came after. Over the next week, I did something I had never done before. I started documenting my life. Every glass of water I drank, I photographed. Every social event I attended, I asked someone to take a picture of me with a non-alcoholic beverage. Every conversation I had, I tried to steer toward the subject of my sobriety, so I would have witnesses. It was exhausting. It was humiliating. It was also completely ineffective, because the internet doesn't care about your photographs or your witnesses. The internet cares about the story. And Kiraya had told a very good story. She had positioned herself as the brave daughter, finally speaking out about a problem that everyone could recognize. Addiction is real. Addiction is a disease. Addiction destroys families. All of those things are true. And by wrapping her lie in those truths, she had made it nearly impossible to challenge without seeming like I was denying the reality of addiction itself. It was brilliant, actually. Horrible, but brilliant. My son called me on the 10th day. His name is Wilas, and he's 2 years younger than Karaya. He's always been quieter than his sister, more thoughtful, less concerned with how he appears to the world. He works as a high school history teacher. He has 2 kids of his own. He's the kind of person who thinks carefully before he speaks. "Mom, I saw the post," he said. "I know it's not true." I felt something in my chest loosen slightly. "Thank you." "Have you thought about responding publicly?" "I don't know what to say. If I deny it, I look defensive. If I stay silent, everyone assumes it's true." "What if you told the truth?" Wheelis asked. "Just directly, clearly. No anger, no defensiveness, just the facts." So I did. I wrote a post on my own Instagram account, which had been dormant for 3 years. I had created it only because Kiraya had insisted that all the cool moms were on social media. I had posted maybe 5 times total, but now I used it to tell my story. "I want to address the post from my daughter," I wrote. "I do not drink alcohol. I have never struggled with alcoholism. I do not have an addiction problem. I understand that addiction is real and affects many families. But I am not one of those families. My daughter's post is not accurate." I don't know why she chose to make this public statement, but I want to be clear. It is false. I posted it at 2 p.m. on a Tuesday. By 3 p.m., I had received 300 comments. By 4 p.m., it was 500. By 5 p.m., the narrative had shifted entirely. Now, people were saying that I was a classic alcoholic in denial. They were saying that my response was exactly what someone with a substance abuse problem would do. They were saying that my daughter was even braver for speaking out despite her mother's defensiveness. One commenter, a woman I had never met, wrote, "This is textbook addiction behavior. The lying, the denial, the victim mentality. I feel so bad for her daughter." That comment had 8,000 likes. I deleted my post. But it was too late. Screenshots had already been taken. The narrative had already solidified. I was no longer a woman who didn't drink. I was now a woman who was denying that she drank. Which, in the court of public opinion, was the same thing. My workplace became unbearable. I work as a project manager for a construction company. I've been there for 11 years. I'm good at my job. My boss had always been happy with my work. But after the post went viral, things changed. People started watching me more carefully. When I went to lunch, they wondered where I was going. When I came back, they wondered if I had been drinking. When I declined a glass of wine at the company holiday party, someone made a joke about needing to stay strong for her family's sake. I realized that I couldn't win. If I drank, it confirmed Kiraya's narrative. If I didn't drink, it looked like I was trying to prove something. Either way, I was guilty. 2 weeks after the original post, I called Natan back. "I want to sue," I said. "Okay," he said, and I could hear him already thinking through the legal strategy. "We'll file a defamation suit. We'll argue that the post was false, that it damaged your reputation, and that your daughter acted with malice. We'll ask for damages." "How much?" I asked. "Depends on what we can prove. The loss of income, the emotional distress, the damage to your reputation. Could be anywhere from $50,000 to $500,000, depending on the judge." I felt something cold move through my stomach. This was real now. This was happening. The lawsuit was filed on a Tuesday morning. By Tuesday afternoon, Kiraya had posted again. "My mother is suing me for telling the truth about her addiction. This is what happens when you try to get help for your family. You get threatened with legal action. I'm standing firm in my truth, and I'm asking for your support as I navigate this difficult time." The post included a link to a GoFundMe page. By the end of the week, she had raised $47,000. I stopped going to work. I told my boss I needed to take medical leave. He seemed relieved. I think he was worried about what I might do in the office, what kind of liability I might represent. I was no longer the reliable project manager. I was now the woman who was suing her daughter, the woman who was denying her addiction, the woman who was destroying her family for money. That's what everyone said. Not out loud, but I could see it in their eyes, in the way they looked at me, in the way they didn't look at me. I spent my days in my house, scrolling through the internet, watching my daughter's narrative grow and expand. She did interviews with addiction specialists. She wrote a Medium article about recognizing addiction in your loved ones. She started a podcast called Breaking the Cycle, where she talked about her journey of accepting that her mother had a problem. She never mentioned me by name. She never had to. Everyone knew who she was talking about. My friends started to distance themselves. Not all of them. Nelliline stayed loyal. So did a woman named Aureline Smith, who I had known since college. But most of them slowly faded away. They didn't return my calls. They didn't invite me to things. They didn't want to be associated with me, with the controversy, with the complicated situation. I understood. I didn't like it, but I understood. 3 months after I filed the lawsuit, Natan called me with an update. The case was moving forward. We had discovery scheduled. We would be able to subpoena Kiraya's medical records, her therapist's notes, any documentation she had about my supposed addiction. We would depose her under oath. We would force her to defend her lies. "This is going to be difficult," Natan warned. "She's going to say things that hurt you. She's going to claim abuse, neglect, trauma. She's going to paint you as a villain. Are you prepared for that?" "No," I said. "But I'm going to do it anyway." The deposition was scheduled for a Tuesday morning in Natan's office. I arrived 15 minutes early and sat in the waiting room watching my hands. They weren't shaking. I had expected them to shake, but they weren't. I felt very still, very calm, very far away from my own body. Kiraya arrived with her own lawyer, a woman named Genielle Salazar, who looked like she had been specifically trained to make opposing counsel feel small and stupid. She had that particular kind of beauty that comes from absolute confidence in one's own righteousness. She looked at me like I was a problem to be solved. The deposition started at 10 o'clock. Natan began with basic questions. Kiraya's name, her age, her occupation, her relationship to me. She answered everything clearly, calmly, with the practiced ease of someone who had rehearsed these answers 1,000 times. Then Natan asked the first real question. When you posted that your mother had been struggling with alcoholism for years, what evidence were you basing that statement on? Kiraya's lawyer objected immediately. Vague and ambiguous, calls for speculation. I'll rephrase, Natan said. Ms. Matthews, can you describe specific instances when you observed your mother consuming alcohol? Kiraya looked at me. Just for a moment. Just long enough for me to see something flicker across her face. Something that might have been doubt, or might have been calculation. She drinks wine, Kiraya said finally. How often? Natan asked. Regularly. Daily? Several times a week. And you witnessed this? Yes. When? Give me a specific date and time when you observed your mother drinking wine. Kiraya's lawyer stood up. We're not going to sit here and be badgered. My client has already answered the question. Your client has made accusations that have damaged my client's reputation, Natan said calmly. She's going to answer the question. The judge, we had a judge present for the deposition, which meant this had escalated beyond what I had realized, looked at Kiraya. Answer the question, Ms. Matthews. Kiraya's jaw tightened. I don't remember the specific date. Do you remember the month, the year, the location? It was at various family gatherings. Which family gatherings? Christmas, Thanksgiving. My daughter's birthday party. And at the Christmas gathering, what did you observe your mother drinking? Wine? What color? Red wine. How much did she consume? I don't know exactly. More than one glass? Yes. More than two? I don't remember. More than three? Possibly. Natan leaned back in his chair. So your post, which stated that your mother showed up to your daughter's school event already 3 drinks in, was based on your belief that she had possibly consumed more than 3 glasses of wine at Christmas and Thanksgiving? That's not... Yes or no, Ms. Matthews? I was speaking about a pattern of behavior, Kiraya said. Her voice had changed now. It had lost some of its confidence. Not just one incident. What pattern? Give me examples of this pattern. And that's when Kiraya did something I didn't expect. She started to cry. Not big, dramatic sobs. Just tears sliding down her face. Her lawyer immediately put a hand on her arm, but Kiraya waved her off. She was always drinking, Kiraya said, her voice shaking. Every time I came over, there was wine in the kitchen. Every time we went out, she would order wine at dinner. It was always there. Always. And I was tired of pretending I didn't see it. I felt something shift in the room. The judge's expression changed. Natan's posture changed. Even Genielle Salazar seemed to recalibrate her approach. But you never directly observed her becoming intoxicated? Natan asked, his voice softer now. No, Kiraya admitted. But that doesn't mean it wasn't happening. It means you made a public accusation based on assumptions rather than facts. It means I was trying to help my mother, Kiraya said, and now she's suing me for it. The deposition ended shortly after that, We had what we needed. Kiraya had admitted that she had no direct evidence of my drinking. She had admitted that her post was based on assumptions. She had admitted that she couldn't provide a single specific incident. But I didn't feel victorious. I felt hollowed out. That night, I sat in my living room and thought about my daughter, about the little girl who used to perform in my living room, about the teenager who felt so much pressure to be perfect that she had started inventing false versions of herself, about the woman who had decided that the best way to get attention was to destroy her own mother's reputation. I thought about all the ways I had failed her, not by drinking, but by not seeing how much pain she was in, by not recognizing that her need for external validation was a sign of something deeper, by loving her in ways that she couldn't receive. And I thought about how I couldn't fix any of that now, how the lawsuit had created a chasm between us that couldn't be crossed, how I had chosen to fight back, and in doing so, I had lost my daughter entirely. The case went to trial 6 months later. It lasted 3 days. Natan presented evidence that I didn't drink. He presented testimony from Nelaline and Oraline about my sobriety. He presented my medical records, which showed no signs of alcohol abuse. He presented the deposition transcript, where Kiraya had admitted she had no direct evidence of my drinking. Kiraya's lawyer presented a different kind of evidence. She presented expert testimony about the nature of addiction, about how addicts often hide their drinking, about how family members often can't see the full extent of the problem. She presented Kiraya's testimony, where she talked about her childhood, about feeling neglected, about watching her mother prioritize work over family. None of it was relevant to whether I actually drank, but all of it was relevant to how the jury felt about me. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. When they came back, they found in my favor. They awarded me $150,000 in damages. I had won. But as I sat in the courtroom, watching Kiraya cry, watching her husband put his arm around her, watching my granddaughter, who had been brought to court to testify about her grandmother, look at me with confusion and hurt, I realized that I hadn't won anything. I had destroyed my relationship with my daughter. I had turned her into a victim. I had given her exactly what she wanted, a narrative where she was the brave one and I was the villain. And the worst part was that I had done it on purpose. I had chosen the lawsuit knowing what it would cost. I had chosen to fight back instead of finding another way. I had chosen wrong. After the trial, I didn't know what to do with myself. I had won the case, but I had lost everything that mattered. Kiraya stopped speaking to me entirely. She blocked me on social media. She told Kamiara that I was a bad person. She told Wheelis that I had chosen money over family. I went back to work. My boss seemed relieved to have me back, though I could tell that the perception of me had shifted permanently. I was no longer the reliable project manager. I was the woman who had sued her daughter, the woman who had won a defamation case, the woman who had destroyed her own family for $150,000. 3 months after the trial, I received a letter from Kiraya. It came to my house, addressed in her handwriting. I almost didn't open it, but I did. "Mom," it said, "I want you to know that I don't regret what I did. I was trying to help you. I was trying to get you to see that you had a problem. And yes, maybe I exaggerated. Maybe I wasn't being completely accurate, but my intention was good. I was trying to save you. But now you've sued me. You've humiliated me. You've made me out to be a liar. And you've taught Kamiara that it's okay to destroy people when they hurt you. I don't know if we can come back from this. I don't know if I can ever trust you again. But I wanted you to know that I'm sorry, not for trying to help, but for how I did it. And I'm sorry that you chose to destroy me instead of just talking to me. I hope the money was worth it. I read that letter 100 times. I memorized it. I hated it. I understood it. And I realized that Karaya had been right about one thing. I had chosen money over family. Not because I needed the money, but because I needed to be right. I needed to prove that I wasn't the person she had accused me of being. I needed the world to know that she was lying. But in proving that, I had proven something else. I had proven that I was willing to destroy my own daughter to protect my reputation. I had proven that I valued being right more than I valued being a mother. I had become the villain in my own story. A year after the trial, I reached out to Karaya. I didn't call her. I didn't email her. I showed up at her house on a Saturday morning, knowing that Colton would be at his gym and Kamiara would be at soccer practice. I knew her schedule better than she knew I knew it. She answered the door with surprise and something that might have been hope before she shut it down. "I don't want to fight," I said immediately. "I'm not here to fight." "Then why are you here?" she asked. "I'm here to tell you that you were right." She didn't say anything. She just stared at me. "You were right that I wasn't seeing you," I continued. "You were right that I was so focused on being a good mother that I missed the fact that you were struggling. You were right that I needed to pay attention to what you were trying to tell me. And you were right that I failed you." "But I wasn't right about the drinking," Kiraya said quietly. "No," I agreed. "You weren't." "I lied," she said. "I made it up. I knew you didn't drink, and I made it up anyway because I was angry at you and I wanted people to see you the way I saw you. And then when you sued me, I realized how much damage I had done. But I was too proud to admit it." I felt tears on my face. I hadn't cried during the trial. I hadn't cried after the verdict. But I was crying now. "I'm sorry," Kiraya said. "I'm sorry for lying about you. I'm sorry for hurting you. I'm sorry for making you feel like you had to fight back." "I'm sorry for fighting," I said. "I'm sorry for choosing the lawsuit instead of choosing you. I'm sorry for not seeing that you were in pain and needed help instead of a courtroom." We didn't hug. We weren't ready for that. But we sat on her porch for 3 hours and talked. We talked about why she had felt the need to lie. We talked about my failure to see her pain. We talked about how we could possibly rebuild what we had destroyed. It wasn't a complete reconciliation. It couldn't be. Too much had happened. Too much damage had been done. But it was a beginning. Over the next year, we slowly rebuilt our relationship. I started seeing a therapist to understand why I had been so focused on being right, that I had been willing to destroy my own daughter. Kiraya started seeing a therapist too, to understand why she had felt the need to lie, why she had felt so invisible, that the only way to get her mother's attention was to make up a story about addiction. We learned that we had both been broken in different ways. I had been so focused on being a good mother that I had become a controlling one. I had loved her, but I had loved her in ways that made her feel small and unseen. And she had responded by trying to get my attention in the only way she knew how, by creating a crisis that I couldn't ignore. It took a long time to heal. But we did heal. Today, 3 years after the lawsuit, Kiraya and I have a relationship again. It's different from what it was before. It's more honest. We don't pretend that everything is fine. We talk about the hurt we caused each other. We acknowledge the pain, but we're also present for each other in ways we weren't before. I'm present for Karaya, without trying to fix her or mold her into the person I think she should be. And she's present for me without needing me to be a perfect mother or a cautionary tale. I still think about the lawsuit sometimes. I think about how much money I won and how little it mattered. I think about how I could have chosen differently. I think about all the time I lost with my daughter because I was so focused on proving that I was right. And I think about what I learned, that being right isn't worth losing the people you love. That listening is more important than being heard. That sometimes the best thing you can do for your family is to admit that you're wrong, even when you're not. I'm not the person I was 3 years ago. I'm not the woman who sued her daughter to prove a point. I'm someone who has learned, through tremendous pain, that family is more valuable than vindication. If you're in a situation like mine, if someone you love has hurt you and you're thinking about fighting back, I want to tell you something. Before you choose the lawsuit, before you choose the confrontation, before you choose to be right, think about what it will cost. Think about whether proving your point is worth losing the relationship. Think about whether you can live with that choice. Because I can tell you from experience, the answer is usually no. Hit follow if this hit close to home.